Back to that top story now. You can see that breaking news on your screen. The ACCC suing Coles and Woolworths over prices. And joining me now is independent MP Allegra Spender. We're going to talk about politics, and this has just broke in the last 20 minutes or so, Allegra. So I just wanted to ask you about it. This is probably not a great surprise given there was the price gouging inquiry, but what do you think is, from what you've seen so far, it looks like the ACCC have a pretty strong case.
But look, we will see what happens with the case. I think if they've decided to take them on, then they must feel that they've got strong evidence. As you say, we've only just got this out, so I'll be watching carefully because I know that everyone in the community is concerned about prices in supermarkets.
I know big business are worried about these divestiture powers that have been put forward by the coalition. This might help, at least give some popular support to those kinds of powers. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, to be honest, I think that I have to question where the divestiture would go to. If you were going to divest, a major supermarket, who are you going to divest it to? Is it likely to be, just the other one? I do think that we need to make sure that, we have strong competition and really across the economy. I'm not convinced, to be honest, that the divestiture powers are the right way to go, but I'm open-minded and I'll see where the ACCC goes on this. I think more broadly, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are creating the right environment for business. And the businesses I'm particularly interested in are the ones that are competitors. The competitors to Coles and Woolies, and actually in all parts of our economy, are those young, dynamic businesses. And so the focus for me is how do we get, the right resources, the right opportunities, and the right capital to those young, dynamic businesses, because that's the best way of driving competition.
We've heard big business, the BCA dinner last week, just saying that, look, we're all taking the economy and our success for granted. It's business that create these jobs. They're worried about productivity, things like IR. They're also worried about the Greens, to be frank. The Greens and their push, and this populist push that seems to be really anti-business. Today, you have the Treasurer wanting to get through these RBA reforms, and they'll do that perhaps with the Greens in the Senate. The Greens also want to legislate for lower interest rates. What do you think about that?
The Greens and I are very far apart on most economic policies. I'll let you know, Laura. And to be honest, I'm very sympathetic to what the business community has said last week. Our prosperity is driven by the businesses of our country. Small, medium, and large businesses that employ people and actually, through driving productivity, enable everyone to get higher wages. So I'm extremely supportive of business, and I think I've been also extremely critical of some of the government's IR policies and believe that we do need to roll some of those back. So, that's where I stand. I've always backed businesses. I spent, more than half my working life running businesses, and I know what it takes. And, in my community, what people are asking for is they're saying, look, how do we get those young, dynamic businesses? We've got a lot of sort of venture capital of tech companies. How do we get them really building and growing? And that's a real focus for me.
And what's the feedback? The polls show today that essentially, and this is the feedback we've been getting regularly on this program by people who know Redbridge Group, who do focus groups. They research this stuff week in, week out, if not day in, day out. And they're saying, well, the view of the Albanese government is that it has the power, but we're not really sure that they've done enough and are willing to do enough to look at those issues, like getting young, dynamic businesses to thrive, or like bringing down the cost of living or tackling the housing crisis. So what are the big ideas coming through, Allegra? And as we go into an election, you could be in the position to be kingmaker because it's looking like a hung parliament.
I'm not trying not to jump ahead, and I know that everyone in the political circles is saying, "Oh, hung parliament."
But it doesn't matter if we're not. That's leverage. This is perhaps a golden opportunity to get something done. And I know you conduct a lot of seminars and groups, and you're dialed into the business community. What's the one thing that you want to get done?
Look, I want to drive business productivity, and I think honestly, the challenge. So the challenge of that is it's not one simple thing. It's actually a bunch of things. For one thing, it's about access to capital, and we know that we don't have as big a startup and startup and venture sector as other parts of the country of the world. We've got about a third of the US venture capital industry in about half of the UK. So we need to build up that access to capital. And that's probably around changing some rules around superannuation and how the big super funds could be investing more in that venture space. I think the second big piece is actually making it simpler for businesses to thrive. And so that is about saying, how do you over time reduce those the red tape pieces? And I know people use the term red tape. The truth is that generations of governments have tried to deal with it, but you have to keep on focusing on that. And my view is you need a sector by sector approach on that. And then on housing, I think what we need is to have stronger incentives for the states and local governments to improve their planning. In where I live in Woollahra, the LGA, it takes around 160 days for just a domestic DA to get approved, and that's on average. Yeah. So some people are waiting months and months and months. The more time you wait, the more cost to business, the more cost to families. And so it is actually about, how do we get the incentives right for that, but also how do we keep, lower the costs of construction in this country? And that is why I'm pushing the government to make us able to bring in, construction workers at a fast track way, because we need those people in the country to help build the houses that we need.
Yeah, there's a lot of clipping the ticket behaviour. Essentially, when it comes down to it, Allegra, you've got to, I know you try not to think too much about a hung parliament, but you've got to be thinking about opportunities that come with that as well. If it was a hung parliament and the Greens were in a minority government along with the Teals, how would that work, do you think? Sounds like a disaster.
I don't think I'm talking about any option of that. I think, and genuinely, I'm not planning to get into government with anyone. What I have said is, over time, I will vote on the issue by issue, because I think that's what the community expects. People want people to support good ideas wherever they come from. And that's how I actually approach things in general, which is like, if it's a good idea coming, from any part of Parliament, from any part of society, I will back it. If it's a bad idea, I will pan it. And that's what I think my community really expects under, in this Parliament, also under future parliaments. And that's really that's the deal that's how I will approach it at the time.
What did you think about the research that showed that the Liberals and Peter Dutton has ticked up a little bit in Teal seats? He's a little bit more popular than he was in years gone by. What do you put that down to?
I'm not sure, really. And my focus isn't about, to be honest, Peter Dutton. My focus is about what's going on in my community. And, people are worried about the economy, but they are also what you described earlier. They're worried about populism. They're worried about ideas that sound good, but then ultimately, don't deliver. And I think that's true of all types.
So you think voters are actually quite attuned to that?
Yeah, I think they are, because for instance, let's talk about housing. I've heard, so many silver bullets on housing. This is going to fix it. This is going to fix it. We've spent honestly 20 years getting into this mess on housing. With all the first home owners grants and all these things that sounded good, like we were helping people. We've seen, home ownership, get completely out of reach with young people, where it costs, around 8 times someone's average income now to buy a house. It used to cost 4. We are locking people out, and that's while generations of politicians said they're helping young people. So I am sceptical about programs that don't actually deliver what we need in housing, which is actually supply. And so I think, the community is attuned to that, because we've heard it so often before. And, my job is to try and really look at the evidence, talk to the community, talk to stakeholders, and come up with a research base view on an issue, rather than something that I think is going to be sort of a quick political win, or is going to wedge the opposition, which is what people, I think, are frankly over.
Yeah, I think so too. The double haters at the moment, the voters that don't like either of the major parties. Yeah. We will see. Allegra, always good to talk to you. We'll get you back on soon.
Thanks so much, Laura.